Just this past week, President Trump removed the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the BLS, following a jobs report that he disagreed with that his administration thought was inaccurate. His nominee to replace them, Heritage Foundation chief economist E.J. Antoni, now faces the challenge of ensuring public confidence in the accuracy of future labor data, which has already been under scrutiny in recent past. It is very important to note that BLS numbers have indeed become more volatile in recent years. In last month's report, job gains for May and June were revised down by a combined 258,000, suggesting lower growth this spring. That's a major revision. Now, we've seen pretty large revisions in the past like this, especially surrounding the COVID pandemic. But when we start to see an increase in these major revisions numbers, it starts to show that there may be cracks in our data that we're collecting. One major factor behind these revisions is declining survey participation. So if you're not aware, the BLS conducts surveys where they literally just send out physical surveys to businesses and consumers. And fewer businesses are responding to these surveys that the BLS is sending out. So when fewer businesses are responding, statisticians have to rely more heavily on just modeling and estimates versus actual data that comes in. They have a small amount of data that comes in, and then they have to blow that up to represent the full population size. And then after the fact, when these delayed responses come in, or we're able to get more data than the initial survey, these revisions happen. And that's how we get major discrepancies in the initial reported number and then the actual number. So just to back this up, we can see that over the past decade, the response rate for the BLS establishment survey, which underpins the monthly jobs report that we're talking about, has dropped from 61% all the way down to 43%. The household survey, which helps calculate unemployment and labor force participation rates, has seen its response rate fall from 88% to 68%. These are pretty significant drops in the response rates. Other economic reports have also been affected. For example, the response rate for shelter price calculations used in inflation data has declined by 14 percentage points, and the rate for consumer price index weighting data has fallen by 28 points. So across the board, we are seeing a drop-off in these companies and businesses that are responding to these surveys that our economy relies on going forward to get an accurate representation of where we think we are and how strong the economy is. And it is ultimately those data swings that make month-to-month numbers more prone to these revisions and dramatic changes, especially for smaller demographic subgroups. One example of those small subgroups would be small businesses. They're ultimately just less likely to respond promptly, and that means that their input may not be fully reflected in early reports. On top of this, funding constraints have added to the challenge for the BLS. So the BLS has had a dramatic decrease in funding, and that has led to them having to stop producing about 350 detailed producer price indices that are tracking industry-specific costs for goods and services. Now, ultimately, the BLS tracks over 10,000 of these indices, so 350 isn't the end of the world, but it's 3.5% reduction in the amount of data that we're taking in. So we're just steadily increasing towards a point of more ambiguous data, less response rates, more revisions, so there's a lot of volatility and scrutiny about these numbers that we're getting and how accurate they actually are. Now, going back to Mr. Antoni, if he is confirmed, he will face the task of improving both accuracy and public trust in this data. Those are two pretty hard things to do given the current political climate and economic environment. Two priorities that are often suggested by many economists are breaking down barriers between statistical agencies to improve data sharing and modernizing data collection methods. So one of the reasons that we have lower response rates to these surveys is because they just come in archaic forms. There are some surveys that are still conducted by fax machines. I don't know about you, but I don't even know how to work a fax machine. So there's a lot of opinion that if we were to change how these numbers are collected in a more easy and efficient way, they can be more accurately recorded, they can be more timely, and overall, it's just the whole system just needs a revamp of how these surveys are conducted. We also can see that Mr. Antoni's public commentary has included both praise and criticism of the BLS. In some cases, the numbers that he has cited raise additional questions. For example, one recent claim tied a rise in native-born employment to immigration policy changes. However, that same data subgroup suggested that native-born population over the age of 16 grew by 4.5 million in just 6 months, which is well above the historical average of about 1.5 million per year and inconsistent with the complete zero growth recorded in 2023 and 2024. So to say that all of a sudden in the last 6 months, the native-born population over the age of 16 grew by 4.5 million, that's also raising some questions. So this discrepancy highlights why accurate measurements and transparent methodology are so important in this space. Ultimately, whether under current leadership or new leadership, the BLS's role is to provide objective, reliable economic data that policymakers, businesses and the public can trust. That's what keeps our economy going. That requires keeping the work as transparent and nonpartisan as possible, modernizing outdated processes, and addressing the decline in survey participation to ensure that numbers truly reflect the state of the economy. Because without these survey numbers, there's not much that people have to go off of. They go off of the JOLTS jobs report, the monthly jobs report, the CPI, PPI, and if these survey numbers are dropping, then we just have less and less information available to be able to make accurate predictions. So if you're seeing these headlines about the BLS and Trump firing the head of the BLS and how are we going to collect data going forward, this is basically all the context surrounding that situation. We don't know if Mr. Antoni will be confirmed yet, but we will have more information, I'm sure, in the coming weeks and months, and I will be sure to keep you guys updated on that. So if you guys like this type of content, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, letting me know your thoughts, and make sure to subscribe so you guys can stay up to date for more videos like this one in the future. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.